All right, John Perry here, and it is Wednesday once again. Last week was a really interesting one. We got to look at this weird alien creature. Everybody on the internet was freaking out when this was first found. Everybody thought it was definitely an alien. It took people weeks to kind of calm down and figure out what this actually was. And I was really impressed with you guys because you figured it out right away. Almost all of you got it right. This was a three-toed sloth. The first person to get that right, according to my count, was Hans Ovlin Tieli. Hopefully I just said your name correctly. But he said three-toed sloth. It was pretty obvious once I saw the claws. My reasoning went like this. It looks like it has nipples, so it's probably a mammal. Pretty long arms. Oh, whoa. It's a sloth. He goes on to say some other rather comical things, if you'd like to read that. Congratulations, Hans Ovland Tieli. You have now officially been right on the internet. I was really interested in how easy it was for everybody to figure this out, but I think that most of you figured this out simply because you knew that this should probably be an animal. When this first happened, people were really confused. They thought it was an alien, or at least a monster of some kind. For a long time, for weeks, people were talking about this on the internet. In hindsight, it's really obvious. This is a three-toed sloth. It was in Panama, where sloths live. It's just a sloth with no hair. By the way, a lot of times when animals get bloated in the water, their hair can fall out. I don't know if that's the reason this thing was hairless. It might have been sick before and lost its hair. But it is fairly common for animals to lose their hair after they die. I think it's really interesting the psychology behind this. Now, obviously, if we were more reasonable as a species, every time we found something, we would first assume that it's something normal, because things that are common are more common than things that are uncommon, right? So if we were a more reasonable species, whenever we'd find something weird looking like this, the first thing we'd do is we'd say, I wonder what species I already know of this might be. But there's just something about, especially when we see a dead animal, we have this fear reflex, especially a dead, bloated animal. I would assume that our phobia of rotting corpses is because, our ancestors that weren't afraid of rotting corpses maybe would eat them and get sick, or start poking around and end up getting sick. I could see natural selection giving rise to a phobia for rotting corpses. We like to validate our fears and feel like our fears are warranted. And so I think that's why when we see a corpse like this, we freak out and we want to just assume that it's an alien or a monster or something special. So in the future, as new monsters come up on the internet, the first time you see them, just think to yourself, okay, most likely this is not a monster. It might be an alien from outer space or something, but most likely it's something common here on Earth that is somehow either deformed or maimed or rotten. And we'll see time and time again that is the case. Injured or rotting normal animals. So, congratulations to everybody who figured out that was indeed a sloth. This week's guest is another bird. A really fascinating bird. And aside from having the skull, I actually got for you the talons of this critter, so you can see those as well. Here are the talons. Really awesome. Look at this. These are like dragon feet. I love the scales on this. Extremely textured feet. It's like sandpaper. It's really cool. Look at those talons. It's kind of gross. We just, at Shintimony Wildlife Center, if people send us an animal and it dies, and we have permits to use them for education, we'll cut off their feet and put them in a fruit dryer. And they turn into these nice little preserved artifacts like this. So notice I have another skull and another talon behind here. This is for comparison. So as week 5, I believe, we saw the red-tailed hawk. This is the red-tailed hawk. This is actually a different specimen from week 5. So this is a red-tailed hawk, and this is a red-tailed hawk talon. And when I do these bird skulls from now on, I want to compare the red tail to whatever it is that we're looking at, because the red tail is a really common bird, at least here in North America, and it's kind of like the standard hawk. So I like to compare other birds to it, so you guys can do a little bit better in your guesses as to what these critters are. So this is the red tail, and compare that to this guy. Something that I want to note. This has nothing to do, I mean, this isn't unique to this specimen, but look inside here, this little triangle. This is the Ant Orbital Finestra. And remember, we talked about that on week 5 when we looked, I think it was week 5 that we talked about it, when we looked at the red-tailed hawk. He's got a little bit of a larger Ant Orbital Finestra. See that spider web-like structure inside there? This guy's got it too. It's actually more easy to see with this lighting on the red-tailed hawk. But that spider web structure inside there, that is the turbinates of a bird. And the turbinates in birds evolved completely independently from the turbinates in a mammal. And again, remember, the turbinates in a mammal look like that. Those structures inside the nose, those are the turbinates. And those allow warm-blooded animals to breathe without losing moisture from the lungs. When you breathe out, the air that you breathe out is very wet, and it will condense on those turbinates. That moisture will condense on those turbinates as it's exiting. And then when you breathe in again, you'll moisten that air and bring wet air back to the lungs. So that's one of the main functions of those turbinates. Dinosaurs, of course, also have a huge Ant Orbital Finestra, much bigger than this specimen's, usually, in comparison to the other holes on the skull. Okay, here we have this week's specimen on top and the red-tailed skull on bottom. And you can see that this week's specimen is a little bit larger. Actually, let me get you let's do a ruler. This is something that people have been requesting. So there we have it in inches. And here we have it in centimeters, almost 8 centimeters long. Fairly big bird. You definitely don't want to get in a fight with one of these things. They're big enough to hurt you, and though they could use their beak to hurt you, they're more likely to use their talons. Look at these monster talons. I'm going to compare this. The one on the left is the red-tailed hawk. The one on the right is the new guy. Look how much more rough the scales are on the bottom of the feet of this larger guy. Those dragon feet. I love it. Also, something else that's interesting about this species is that digit number 4, toe number 4, can actually move backwards when it's alive. It can't in this because it's dried the way that it is. But when it's alive, it can actually adjust that backwards or have it forward. So it can have 2 toes in back, 2 toes in the front, or it can have 3 in the front, 1 in the back. The red-tailed hawk can't really do that. It's just always 3 in front, 1 in back. What do you think it is? Here's the talon. Here's the skull. What's it Wednesday? All right, mark, set, go. Sophie.
I'm just go watch.